Good afternoon, everybody. The UK's Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who took power in a coup d'etat earlier this year, has pledged more money to the Zelensky regime, both now and next year. Even though there's a huge crisis at home and there's a lot of people who are finding themselves in great difficulty because of the economic mess that he's made, he isn't willing to help any of the people here in the UK, but he is willing to give an immediate £250 million to Ukraine to supply them with hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition. He says he wants peace, but he's sending weapons to a war zone. Not only that, he's also pledged at a meeting of the UK and the Nordic countries yesterday that he will match or top the amount of lethal aid he's giving to the Zelensky regime next year. So this year, the UK, under Johnson and Truss and Sunak combined, have given £2.3 billion in money and weapons to Ukraine, and he says that next year, in 2023, he's going to give as much again, or even more, which is utterly ridiculous when, on the other hand, in the UK, he's talking about increasing taxes and cutting spending because we are in a fiscal crisis, which, of course, he made in the furlough scheme and in the lockdown era. So it just goes to show, a different puppet in number 10 and the same terrible, obnoxious policies are going on, which are obnoxious to actual real peace and really building a prosperous world in the future. I've always said from the very beginning that we should not be arming the Zelensky regime. We should not be sending them money. This is a conflict which could easily have never taken place at all if we'd all stuck to the Minsk agreements that everybody agreed back in 2014. But we didn't. The Zelensky regime didn't. NATO countries didn't. They encouraged him to break the Minsk agreements, and then, of course, this conflict has started. But rather than trying to de-escalate, it looks like Sunak is just going to pump in more weapons, more money into a war zone. But he's saying, oh, but we're not directly involved. Sorry, mate, if you're giving money to somebody to kill somebody else, you are directly involved, and you're making this country directly involved as well, which doesn't benefit anybody in this country at all, maybe apart from arms manufacturers and people who are in businesses that will make a big profit out of the misery happening in Ukraine. We need to end this, and I think we should be trying to restore normal relations with Russia, lift the sanctions so that we buy Russian oil and gas in the short term to keep the lights on while we rebuild our energy infrastructure, which has literally been blown up by this fake Conservative Party. There's video of Alok Sharma when he was the business secretary pressing a button and detonating Ferrybridge power station, coal power station. So I would love this country to be self-sufficient in energy. We can be. Ultimately, in 10 years' time, we can be on the way there in 2 or 3 years' time. But in the immediate short term, this winter, next year, next winter, we need to restart buying cheap Russian gas and oil in order to provide cheap energy for this country while we undo the damage that the fake Conservative Party has done to our energy infrastructure so that we can become energy self-sufficient in the long term. But, I can blame the fake Conservatives for this, and they are responsible, but the other establishment parties, Labour, Reform UK, Lib Dems, Greens, they all support pumping more money and more weapons to Ukraine to escalate and prolong this conflict. The Heritage Party says differently. We need to de-escalate. We need to end this conflict for the people of Russia, of the West, of Ukraine. Nobody is benefiting from this by keeping it going. Stop the war.